The following vodcast contains opinions from paid professionals. The information provided in this vodcast is general in nature and not advice. For free and confidential support, call 1-800-858-858 or visit www.gamblinghelponline.org.au. Hello and welcome to a bumper edition of Finding Winners as we look to the opening day of the Melbourne Cup Carnival, but also Golden Eagle Day for the very first time at Royal Randwick on Saturday. Ally Mosley is raring to go, already at headquarters at Flemington in Melbourne. And Ally, before we take a look at this weekend's racing, I think we've got to give ourselves a bit of a pat on the back for what we achieved on the tip last Saturday.
Yes, hello, my friend. I'd say I'm all dressed up with nowhere to go, but I'm just dressed up a couple of days too early. I'm checking out the tab marquee in the bird cage where I will not be hanging out because I have to work, but I'll be down here hopefully afterwards to enjoy a little bevy. But we did have a good week, didn't we? So I stuck solid with my mate at the Baskin. And how's you? You found the quinella in the Cox Plate. Well done.
If only it was the other way round.
Yeah, I know. Still, and we see Buckaroo now in a Melbourne Cup, of course.
Yeah, excited to see him there. He had the scans earlier in the week and confirmed by Chris Waller and the team he will head to the first Tuesday in November after a luckless run in the 2-mile event last year. Let's take a look at what happened last Saturday. Via Sestina, she really is the queen of Australian racing, an 11th Group 1 for her. An amazing effort to battle it out with Buckaroo to the line and a fitting farewell for the Moonee Valley circuit as we know it too. Treasure the moment, even though she was in the lost file, I thought she was absolutely terrific right there along the rail in the Cox Plate. And there was a couple of disappointments out of it, including Antino. They're still scratching their head as to what went wrong on Saturday.
Yeah, it was probably the fairy tale ending, wasn't it, to the Cox Plate? We saw J-Mac win his 4th consecutive Cox Plate. Chris Waller, again with Via Sestina. It was a fantastic result. She was tough as teeth, wasn't she? She just kept digging, and I know that that's what Mark Zara said aboard Buckaroo. He said, I thought I had her measure, and that good mare just keeps finding. But Buckaroo looks absolutely spot on towards a Melbourne Cup now, and Craig Williams hops aboard.
Yeah, I think it's a really good booking. He was obviously booked by Chris Waller and the Aussie Kia team as to whether he would ride Buckaroo or Birdman. Buckaroo, the confirmed starter at the moment for Chris Waller, so that's the way he will go. Different programming this year to last. He hasn't had that run over the 2,400 metres, but he just tries his heart out each and every time. He doesn't necessarily clock up too many wins, but I reckon he will be right in the finish there. Also, well done to you. You found Steffi Magnetica in the invitation at $7. The firm on race day was unbelievable. She jumped closer to 3 than 4 on race day and giving Björn Baker and Jason Collett another big victory over the Randwick Mile, and the celebrations absolutely epic as predicted.
Yeah, she got smashed, didn't she? I didn't get the $7, which really frustrates me. You know, it's even more frustrating when you haven't backed them at the price you tipped them at. I think I got her at 5s or something like that, but I was still pleased. But she looked spot on, and she'd had that tick over trial next to Bivakt, actually, who we see here this weekend in the Coolmore, who we'll touch on. But she was just trucking along the rail, and she looked spot on there for the weekend. She was the class mare, and she'll probably push on now. We'll see her here over the carnival. But it was a great training performance. And as those scenes, I think he was picking up Jace again, wasn't he? He was giving him a good lift up in the air.
Poor Jace. I mean, he must enjoy it, but Björn, his celebrations are now becoming legendary. The more he wins, the more he celebrates, which we love. Taking a look quickly at the Spring Champion, won by Attica. That was almost performance of the day for mine. Because of the sectionals they ran mid-race over the 2,000 metres at Randwick, it was steady enough for Shangri-La Boy out in front. So for Attica to reel him in was absolutely exceptional, and he's a really exciting colt for the future.
Yeah, absolutely. Great training performance, and no doubt pretty exciting for Adam Hieronymus, because he obviously was on Shangri-La Boy and he had to make that call early about whether he would ride Attica or Shangri-La Boy. And I think he'd already made the commitment to ride Attica, and then he came out and won on Shangri-La Boy. And then he thought, well, the deal's done now. And from where he'd drawn, it always looked a little bit tricky, but he just timed it to perfection and he stormed home. And he's a bit of a lad, Attica, so I think we'll only see a more improved horse as he starts to mellow and calm down a little bit and gets his racing craft and his lad-like manners under wraps.
Speaking of Godolphin, but also Adam Hieronymus, let's take a look at the Coolmore Stud Stakes, which I think is the headline act of day one of the Melbourne Cup Carnival. I actually think it should be called Coolmore Stud Stakes Day, to be honest, because it is the breed shaper, the stallion maker. It's one of the best 3-year-old races the world over that we see each and every year down the straight six. Hippo comes down to Melbourne to ride Bivarked, of course, a last start winner in the Group 1 Golden Rose over the 1,400 metres. He's had a bit of time in between runs to make sure that he's fresh enough over the 1,200 since his last run. Hippo, I mean, it's been spoken about ad nauseum this week. He is riding out of his skin. He's arguably the informed jockey of Sydney at the moment. He's striking at 21% at Metro grade, which is second to just James McDonald. He comes down, and I'm not going to be surprised if he gets a third Group 1 for Godolphin for this season so far on board Bivarked.
He's just taking every opportunity, isn't he? And he's riding for all the big trainers. He's building a really nice association with Joe Pride. And I saw Chris Waller this morning actually at the Tab Marquee launch, and he said, I'm really pleased that Adam Hieronymus is sticking with Bivarked because he knows the horse well, because as we've talked about, he can sometimes be a little bit tricky, and Hippo's been on him now since he was a 2-year-old and just knows him so well. He knows his quirks. He knows how to keep him settled, which I think is a big thing for this colt, particularly when he has to go down the Flemington straight. But that's my only query with him, Em.
Yeah, so he's had the jump out there, as has the other ones in the market. I mean, Tentaris for Anthony and Sam Freedman. He's had 2 starts down the Flemington straight, albeit over the 1,100 metres, and figured very well there. He's third up. He's got a great turn of foot. The other one, though, that I know we're both keeping our eyes on is Beedman. He had a look down the straight. He seems like a pretty relaxed kind of dude for Peter Snowden and Team Newgate and all of their partners in this well-bred colt. They're the 3 for mine. I'd be surprised if one of those 3 colts isn't winning it.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. It was interesting hearing from Pete Snowden this week. He said, I think the phrase he used was he left quite a bit of meat on the bone for Beedman when he travelled.
He was
but
a big
he's just
boy
such a
at the start of the
relaxed
prep,
colt.
wasn't he?
He is. I was going to say there'd be a bit of meat to leave on the bone. But remember when we saw him first up and Pete came out and said, he's a bit burly. He is burly, and he said he was just carrying condition. He'd had probably, that extra bit of time off after winning in Queensland. So first up, he was a bit tubby, but I just thought he was tough to the line. He just kept finding. And then second up, he still even wasn't quite screwed down. He was obviously desperately unlucky. We all saw what happened. But what I was most taken by was the piece of work that he had in that jump out down the straight here. I think he'll be really suited to straight racing, and I actually think it maps quite well for him on the weekend. And he's travelled well. I actually might go and see if I can get a look at him after this, because he's one of my favourites, and I just can't wait to see how he's come on. And this has always been the target race. They could have gone to an Everest. I think the option was there. They would have had some offers, but I just think he's the one that we're peaking and coming up at the right time. But what's the word on Tentaris from the camp?
Yeah, he's third up, and I think that's the big thing with him too. So he's been really good his 2 starts for this preparation. We know he handles the Flemington straight. He's just got that wicked turn of foot, doesn't he? So if they just go too fast up front, whether they go to the inside, the outside, they split, go down the middle, he'll be there to pounce late or drop on them late, as Matt Hill often calls when it comes to those straight 6 races. Yeah. So I think he's primed third up. For me, it's one of those 3, but I think at the odds, Beedman's third line of betting at the moment with Tentaris and Bivarked tussling for favouritism. He's probably the play because he's at about that $5 mark. One more I'll throw in, which is really interesting placement, is we saw Sky Glider win last Saturday at Royal Randwick. It's very unlike Chris Waller to bring a colt like this down to Melbourne, second up, quick backup, third career start. I know you've got to have a throw at the stumps because it's just worth so much money, and because a lot of the horses in this field are colts, it can be life-changing. But I thought the bold placement maybe hinted to something there as to how big opinion they have of him.
Oh, what he was able to do there first up against fit horses was ultra impressive, and he rated really highly too. So I remember him as a yearling actually. He's by Flying Artie, so he wasn't super commercial at the sales, and he was passed in, and it was a really astute purchase. So he's obviously very lightly raced, but the fact that Chris has the confidence to push on with him in what is, I think, one of the strongest editions of the Coolmore that we've seen in recent years, that says enough. And we can't ever forget about Skyhook either. He's maybe the forgotten horse there. Obviously, he actually had a little freshen. He went to the paddock for a week, and then has come back. So he's been kept quite fresh as well for this 1,200 metre assignment.
So your play and my play, mine will be Beedman each way, and you're on the
Beedman,
nose.
Yeah, Beedman, and then I do want to have a watch on Skyhook.
Okay. Moving on to the Derby, and I see this going one of two ways. Observer, I absolutely demolishes this field and does what he did last weekend, obviously in the Vars, although eased down to the line quite aggressively so by Mark Zahra. Or there's something really rogue that's going to break their maiden in this. Maybe it's something like Savvy Santa, or we see the likes of Azazel, who I've got a bit of a rap on as well. He's only fourth up into his career, and I think he's a really, really nice horse for Mark Walker and Mickey D. But is Observer just going to be too strong after what we saw last Saturday?
Well, it's just looking like that, isn't it? We either have Observer as this boom colt, son of Gaiath, who they're really trying to push here, get off, and don't they have a strong hand across this carnival? I mean, it is incredible the stock that they have in their barns at the moment. And I say barns, that's Australia-wide, really, across New South Wales and Victoria and Queensland as well. So I think, obviously, Observer is the one to beat. He's a very clean-winded horse, I'm told, as well. He just takes everything in his stride, which he needs. There's that aerobic capacity as he steps out to the Derby trip. Providence, as you said, was an eye-catcher in the Vars. I think the Vars form is what we should be looking at here. I think you'd have to throw in O'Shamus as well for the John O'Shea and Tom Charlton stable. I actually think that they could have a very big weekend. He was fantastic in the Vars, the way that he was checked. He just got held up. He went to the outside, then he had to reposition himself towards the inside, which probably wasn't really where you wanted to be. We know they were all getting off the fence there in the Cox Plate as well. So the way that he closed off, he's a big horse, big burly boy. He's got this big head. He's just very typical of, your Derby type of horse. So I thought O'Shamus, and on breeding too, was the one that you could probably have a look at each way.
Speaking of the Vars, options, super unlucky and probably should have gone a lot closer than fifth behind the Godolphin stablemate in Observer. I think he's in with a big shot. You mentioned Providence. He, with two more bounds, like Mark's looking at that screen, mate, it concerned me greatly on the weekend. The other one that's interesting for my racehorse is Engine of War, Blinker's first time. Yeah. And I know that he's been a little bit disappointing, but Blinker's first time can have such a vast improvement on a horse, and also up to the 2,500 metres for the first time. But for my plays in the Derby would be Observer the win, even though he's going to start too short. And I like Azazel at the each way price.
Yeah, I like it. I'm with you with Observer. I think everybody's pretty keen on him. And even the fact that they could have gone to a Cox Plate, I think he would have been competitive in a Cox Plate, but they said, no, the Derby is what we're aiming for. They've kept him safe for that. As you can see, he was given a pretty easy time there in the Vars, eased down, and then a bit of a watch each way on O'Shamus.
Race 8 at Flemington on Saturday is the running of the Tab Empire Row Stakes over the mile for the fillies and the mares. It's the battle between the two titans, the two heavyweights, Pride of Jenny and Fangirl. Obviously, they duelled last start in the King Charles III in a race shape that we've discussed was a little unconventional to what we're used to when it comes to Pride of Jenny. She didn't put that big margin on the field and stretch them out as we're usually accustomed to seeing. So Fangirl, we've spoken about it before. Pride of Jenny's her kryptonite. She doesn't like having that big front runner out in front having to chase, because we know that she just has to be left alone and rattle home late. It makes it really tough for her. Like a Lucy's the other one I wanted to look at, because she's got the one-eyed blinker on for the first time. She's a bit of a wonky donkey, so to speak. She doesn't really go straight. So the one-eyed blinker I've heard from Team Waller and also the ownership group, she actually has started to go straight now. We know that she's a class mare. She's a Group 1 winner over in New Zealand, and she draws a lot better today as well. I think she could be a bit of a fly in the ointment for the two superstar mares at the top.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. And somewhat of a changing of the guard, Em. So for so long, Fangirl and Pride of Jenny have been the pin-up mares that we've seen here racing in races like this carnival in and out. But I think this could probably be towards, obviously, the twilight end of their careers. And then we see the likes of Like a Lucy and your Idle Flyers starting to step up to the plate. And I know that Like a Lucy, as you said, they worked her in that one-eyed blinker on Tuesday, and they said that it seemed to do the trick. So I think definitely a watch on her. And then really, Idle Flyer hasn't done anything, this Daughter of Dundeel, to suggest that she couldn't be right there as well. She is tough too.
Yeah, it's really bold placement again from Matt Smith. Obviously, she's been taking all before her in Sydney, this preparation. A big step up to Group 1 company this time around, but She has this ability to rattle off these supreme sectionals late. She was able to set a little bit closer last time as well with Zach Lloyd in the saddle, obviously with Zach riding in Sydney on the weekend. She gets the services of Mickey D. But, yeah, she's a really interesting watch. I think she is a potential Group 1 winner in time. Whether it's this Saturday, I'm not sure, but a big watch for me. If I'm going to have a play in the race, it's like a Lucy each way.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think we found a lot that we're agreeing on this weekend, so we'll be cheering them home together. I like it.
Okay, we'll move on to Royal Randwick, where we have the running of the 7th ever edition of the Golden Eagle, $10 million for the 4-year-olds over the mile at Randwick for the very first time. And it really is all about Autumn Glow, 7 from 7. Doing some research this week, Ali. So she's currently 115 raider. Black Caviar at the same point in her career, she won her first Group 1 at her 8th start, was an 111 raider. Chris Waller's never had a horse 7 from 7. I know you're against her, but does the fact that Angel Capital not make his way into the field slightly concern you, finding something to beat her?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's been much documented, my stance that came out on X this week, whether you agree or disagree. I think it's important that we can all have an opinion and be respectful of each other's opinions. That's what makes racing so fantastic. You never know what will happen, and everyone can see a race differently or a horse differently. She's clearly a very, very talented mare. She's exciting. Every time James gets off her, he's got a big smile on his face. The way that Chris Waller talks about her is that she's in this different air. She's in rare air. Anyone who has anything to do with her suggests that as well. So my only query with her was that, I was hoping Angel Capital would have been there, because I think he really would have run right up to her. I still think that there's quite a bit of depth here, and there's a couple of horses that I would be nervous about. One of those is obviously Linebacker. The sectionals that he was able to run there were better than Kaying Rising on the day at Randwick, and that form, that trial before that, is certainly stacking up as the trial form to look at. He is peaking, chatting to the stable this week, and Zach Lloyd as well. They couldn't be happier with him. They said he's going as well as he's ever gone. He's absolutely low level. I think he's drawn well to be able to really pounce. And then Panja Tower, what do we say about this Japanese horse? Obviously, he's got huge wraps on him. So he came to Randwick yesterday and he had a look around. So it was sort of like a Kaying Rising type morning. He was able to see the race day stalls, and he had a gallop. And the whispers from the track are that he was very, very impressive in his piece of work, Em.
The only thing that concerns me is this rain that we're getting in Sydney at the moment. So we've had 18 millimetres or so in the last 24 hours, and, you know, the weather gods are playing funny buggers. We don't know when this next lot of rain will arrive. It'll either be on Friday night or Saturday night. If we were to get rain on the Friday night, I reckon we start on a 6, and I don't think that never advantages the Japanese gallopers, because they don't seem to race on soft surfaces over there. If there was one other horse that does worry me in this field, it is Perfumist. I know at a big price for Björn Baker, but on the same day, Autumn Glow and Perfumist were doing battle in alternative races. Perfumist was actually rattling home faster and had a faster 1600 metre time than Autumn Glow did then in the Epsom. And we know that she can go forward, be right there on speed, kind of play a bit of catch me if you can. I don't know if she beats Autumn Glow. I don't think she does, but at the price, I'd be having a little nibble just waiting to find out. But sadly, I do think she continues this unbeaten run, only because this field in the Golden Eagle this year, I wouldn't say it's as good as we had last year. Last year's was like unbelievable. And we know that the form that's come out of it, all those Group 1 winners the world over, I think it's slightly down on class this year. Not much, just slightly down on class. The challenges for Autumn Glow, Linebacker and Perfumist for me. What about you?
Certainly Panja Tower, hoping that we don't get too much more rain, but I'm all over Linebacker, and even Evaporate. I mean, that form's been frank too, with Transatlantic coming out and doing what he did at Randwick on Saturday. So whilst, again, I'll say it, I'd love her to win, I just think it's the most vulnerable that she's been.
The Russell Baldingfall, the sprinters, 6 runners of the Everest contesting this over the 1,300 metres. And it's got to be said that the 1,300 for a lot of these, I actually think is more suitable than the 6 furlongs, particularly for Jimmy Starr, for Briasa, and even Lady Shenandoah as well. Of course, she won the 3 Group 1s as a 3-year-old up to the 1,500 metres at Rosehill Gardens. Up to the 13's going to suit her as well. I know a lot of people thought she was disappointing in the Everest. I actually don't think she was. she was keen. She clipped heels, and from then on in, she was, how were you meant to regain composure and rattle home when you've done that in a race behind the world's best horse, not only the world's best sprinter, the world's best horse. So for me, I think she improves greatly. She's got to be a big winning hope. Out of the Briasa, Jimmy Star, because they're often kind of paired together, aren't they, Ali, as like the two that do battle. I'm with Jimmy. I've got to be with Jimmy. He's drawn kindly. The 1,300 metre suits. He was just epic in the Everest and showed us that he has got some tactical nous about him. He can settle closer if need be.
Yeah, he's more versatile than we've probably given him credit for. He's just quite laid back. He's such a dude. Every time I've gone to see him, he's a stable favourite, and there's just a reason for it. He's got this beautiful personality, and you sort of see that in his races as well. He can really switch off and relax, but obviously Ethan Brown put him right up there in an Everest. So again, he's versatile. I just worry whether that Everest run might have taken just a little bit off him, and Lady Shenandoah is the one that's coming up at the right time. So for the first time, actually, I think this whole preparation, I'm tipping against Jimmy Star and siding with Lady Shenandoah.
Wow. Okay. Well, yeah, I'd be Jimmy Star, Lady Shenandoah. They're both well within the market. There's a few in there that I don't see figuring whatsoever. I'd love to see Rothfire do something again, because it was so amazing to see him return to stakes winning form for Rob Heathcote in the Sydney Stakes last start. I think it's going to be tougher for him facing all of these Everest challenges. And I'm not quite sure what to make of War Machine either. So Lady Shenandoah and Jimmy Star for me. As we kind of get back into the lost and found basket and retrieve one and put one in there, for me, the loss this week, Ali, has to be a horse. And I cannot believe people were making this horse their best bet on the program. Yes, we're built on opinion. Everyone's allowed it. But Point and Shoot has got this real bad habit now, and he might have been the best horse in the field last Saturday, but you can't be missing the kick like that and then trying to rattle home and reel them in when everyone's peaking for these big races during the carnival. Until they can sort that out, you can leave me well out of Point and Shoot.
Yeah, he's one of those horses who just has this flashing light and just draws you in. He's just a money muncher, really, isn't he? I know Rach said she jumped him a couple of weeks ago at home, and she thought that might have switched him on, and she thought it did, but obviously then he had that setback where he was scratched at the barriers, which probably didn't help him either. But for me, I didn't actually back him last weekend, but he's one of those that I just couldn't trust, and he wouldn't get any more of mine.
No, until he can jump on turns and put himself right there, doesn't matter about the talent. You can't be piling into a horse who misses the kick now, and it's more often than not, to be honest. It's more often than not. Who have we found this week, Ali?
Well, it was tricky, Em, but we landed on Napoleonic, and I mean, it was an obvious one. So we were umming and ahhing whether it was too obvious, but I mean, this full credit to this horse and the ride, James McDonald. I thought that was a fantastic ride. We could have seen this horse perhaps even in a Coolmore. They've obviously elected not to go that way, but he's a horse that just keeps stepping up to the plate, doesn't he? And he obviously loved his time around the valley. He's by Wootton Bassett, so you'd expect that he will only improve. He's versatile. He'll be able to get out over a trip. I think he could even probably come back. So I think he's well and truly our found horse.
Is he still in work? Has he got something maybe in mind next weekend at Flemington, Ali?
Possibly. We might have to try and double check that and give an update. Have you heard any more?
Oh, I think he could be maybe looking for something on Champion Stakes Day. So we'll keep you across that for next week, because we'll do a couple of episodes of finding winners then. So just to recap, our thoughts on the Derby, we're both with Observer. I'm keen to play a Zazel each way in the Coolmore Stud Stakes. We both like what Beedman could do at an each way price, especially at about the $6. I think that's very generous. And then we're against the old folk in the Empire Rose and looking for new blood in Like a Lucy.
Absolutely right. I feel like we're pretty much on the same page, Em, for this weekend, which is exciting because you'll be in Melbourne. You'll be in Sydney, won't you? And I'll be in Melbourne. I don't know where I am anymore. Quite honestly, I don't even know what day it is anymore. I know that a couple of weeks ago we said we're Delulu with no Salulu, and I think that might be even more so the case this week. But we'll be cheering together from different states.
I agree. I like that we're on the same page. Before we go, with Rangew in Melbourne ahead of the Lexus Melbourne Cup next Tuesday, have you had any initial thoughts? Obviously, the final field has yet to be formulated. That'll happen on Saturday night at the barrier draw. I'm looking for those weddies that like a bit of give in the ground. Valiant King for mine, and I know he's been costly the last couple of Melbourne Cups, But wouldn't it be a story for Vauban to win, for Adrian and Gay, for everything that they've been through with Sir Delius not taking his place in a Cox Plate, but also a Melbourne Cup? All the hard work to get him to settle, to chill out, to relax on race day. That would be the ultimate training performance for mine, and he does like a bit of cut out of the ground.
Yeah, haven't they put the hard yards in with him, Em? As you said, he's just been such a work in progress. He's not an easy horse, but this is the first time that he's coming into a Melbourne Cup run, having had a full prep under his belt in Australia, a full couple of preps in Australia, a full year. So could be very different for him. So maybe he's the forgotten horse. I know James galloped Meydan this week and gave a glowing report of his ride in the Cup. Buckaroo has come through in lovely order. And then, of course, there's Half Yours, who will only enjoy more rain. The more rain we get, the better. We saw Prince of Penzance here this morning. And can you believe it's been a decade since that historic Melbourne Cup win? I couldn't believe it. It makes me feel really old. But he was here and I thought maybe history will repeat with Jamie Mellon and Half Yours.
Yeah, amazing to see that. We'll have 3 female hoops at the moment riding in the Melbourne Cup, in Jamie Mellon, Rachel King, but also Celine Gaudray, who gets her opportunity on board Torrenzino after a big win in the Geelong Cup last week. All right, we'll be back early next week for some more plays for the Cup, a field of 24 to tackle the 2 miles at Flemington. But for now, enjoy all of the great racing at Randwick and at Flemington for the first day of the Cup Carnival.
Chances are you're about to lose. For free and confidential support, call the number on the screen or visit the website.